Welcome back to What's New with Mead. We're in episode number 80, and I have Matthew from Funktastic Meadery, here to chat about his meadery and his, I don't want to call you a brewery because you're not full-time beer, but it sounds like you guys are also dipping your toes into beer. So we get to kind of open the world a little further. Welcome, Matthew, to the podcast.
Hey, how's it going?
So tell us about your meadery. Give us a little blurb about it.
Uh, I guess the best way to put it is we're a meadery that focuses on crazy things. It's more about meads with more related to pop culture,
Mm-hmm.
crazy flavors, crazy adjuncts, and that's kind of how we started, even from the homebrew side. So it's always been crazy things. For me,
Mm-hmm.
essentially, if someone says, no, you can't do that, that's what we're going to try to do. So,
Got to prove him wrong. I mean,
yeah,
perusing your website, which I'll of course put website links and stuff below. You guys have a lot of mead available from what I'm seeing here. I mean, last I was trying to count. It's like looks like 12 or 15 or more options, which is super cool.
yeah. So, in the meadery on tap at all times, we have 11 meads and we have four beers on tap
Cool.
at all times. Um, as in addition to that, we've got over 200 registered recipes with the good old TTB, um, and variations thereof of some of those recipes. So we're constantly making new things, constantly creating new meads, so that the menu is constantly changing.
Yeah.
Um, we're in Midlothian, Virginia, which nobody knows where that is. So we're about 15 minutes south of Richmond,
Okay.
Virginia.
Yeah.
And Richmond is one of the uh, biggest and best beer cities in the country.
Hmm.
And we also, so one of my favorites is the Answer Brew Pub. I'm really good friends with the owner of the Answer. And one of the things that I always enjoyed about that particular brewery is that the menu constantly recycles, constantly changes. There's constantly new things on tap. And so I adapted that as best as I could to what we do in the meadery. So in general, of those 11 meads that we have on tap, um, five of them are session meads. Typically, four are the brand Funktastic Fizzes, which are all carbonated sessions. We've got one Funktastic Freshie, which is essentially a cocktail-inspired mead, always served on ice. And then um, we've got that's five. We've got six additional still meads, which are on tap. One is coined as a high rollers tap. That's typically a mead that either is super labor intensive or a mead that is significantly more expensive than the rest of them to produce.
Yep.
So that's the high rollers, and then we've got five still meads on tap at all times. So, and usually on a weekly basis, we'll have a new fizz and a new freshie. And then on a monthly basis, it's usually one or two new still meads.
Wow.
It all depends on how busy we are, um, what the release schedule looks like, that kind of thing. What's cool about I would classify us as a nanometery as opposed to like a micrometery.
Hmm.
And what's cool about it is it allows me to be I'm about 5 or 6 months ahead in production.
Hmm.
So what's nice about that is if we hit July and I'm like, you know what, this mead might be kind of cool to release this month, then I have that flexibility to do something like that.
Wow. Yeah. So you're way far advanced. That's cool. So do you have any flagships? If you're rotating, do you have any that you call your flagships?
Um, Not really. We have we have one fizz that is, I guess the best way to put it is a customer chosen flagship.
Hmm.
So we have a mead called Funktastic Fizz F&M Root Beer, which is essentially an A&W root beer
Hmm.
clone. And that's pretty much always on tap. There's multiple reasons for that. One, just about everybody loves it. So it's always something nice for people to have as a consistent product.
Hmm.
Um, but it's also really, if you like root beer, it's also a really approachable mead.
Hmm.
So I would say a lot of times, our largest consumer in general would be a craft beer nerd.
Hmm.
They're the ones that are most frequently coming in. But in addition to that, we get the ladies that come in that are wine drinkers and they drag their husbands in, and their husbands are like, no, 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 we don't drink wine. And I'm like, well, do you drink root beer? And as soon as I say that, they're like, heck yeah, I do. And I'll give them a taste of that, and they're like, I want that one.
That's great.
And
Yeah.
all of a sudden we turn we turn husbands that are not wine drinkers into technically wine drinkers.
Yeah.
So it's pretty cool to have that pretty much always at our fingertips to, turn somebody onto wine.
Yeah.
So,
That that's one thing that's been kind of funny. I've done a couple pouring events with my buddy, and he joked a while back. He's like, we're the tent that all the females go to, and then at this last pouring event, we had probably 50% that were big burly men coming by and asking for this strawberry lemonade mead, and I was
yep,
just like, I don't think it has to be a female only thing, but it definitely has that view. I mean, I think a lot of men at first are like, yeah, I don't want to drink that. That's sissy
yeah,
wine. It's like
yep,
that's not it at all. So it's great
yep,
that y'all have a bridge for them to
yep,
cross.
for sure. And to your point about the different people that are drinking meads, like I said, in our tap room, majority are craft beer nerds. And I think it's because what we do with mead is more it's more in line with craft beer just in
Hmm.
general in terms of flavors and adjuncts and that kind of thing. But with that said, it was what day was that? Last Sunday I was working the tap room, and I had three guys come in from Mexico. They were one of the guys was in town spray painting murals on buildings and things like that. So I had those three guys in, and then I had four or five of my regulars, which are members, and then there was a table with a husband and wife, never been in before, and then there was like four old ladies in the corner. And what was cool about the way that the way that tap room looked at that time was that it was very diverse,
Hmm.
and in in most instances you would not have a a group of people that diverse sitting in the same place talking to each other and drinking the
Yeah.
same thing. So it's like it's one of the coolest things for me is, you know, it's people preach community and building this vibe or this place for people to come and hang out, but to
Hmm.
be there and actually see all these different people enjoying what you're making and what you're doing in terms of of a place to hang out is really cool to see.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I personally have aspirations to open a meadery, and that seems like the community aspect is super important, but also just bridging the gap for people and getting the word of mead out there, because I feel like it's still, even with the internet getting out there, getting the word out there, it's still confused with many other things.
I
So let's
mean,
talk.
we can certainly thank Budweiser to some degree for the dilly
Yeah.
dilly commercials. I
Yeah.
mean, that's they put sort of a negative spin on it, but
Right.
negative or positive, people are still looking to see what it is.
Right.
If you watch those old commercials, there are for sure a bunch of people that are like, I have
Hmm.
no idea what he's talking about. I should probably look that up.
Yeah,
So
it's true.
that's kind of it's publicity is positive no matter what, whether it's negative or positive. It's just a matter of how you spin it. So
Yeah, that's true. Interesting. Um, well, let's go back to this flagship idea for a second because you mentioned you have a rotating tap list all the time. At what point, like with this root beer mead, at what point did you decide we need to have it on tap all the time? And
yeah,
within that, like, how do you decide when one goes well and you keep it on for longer?
yeah. So it was pretty much right at the beginning.
Hmm.
If you have 100 people come in and 95 of them are like, "Holy crap, what is this? It tastes so good. This has alcohol in it. It tastes just like root beer." Once you start hearing that over and over again, it's very, very difficult to pull
Yeah.
things off. That said, today, literally today, a keg of root beer kicked, and I said to my assistant mead maker Ray, I was like, man, root beer has been on for I don't know, it's been 4 or 5 months straight now. I was like, think we should pull it and put something else on. And then I remembered this coming up weekend is Memorial Day weekend, and every
Yeah.
Memorial Day weekend we do. We're in a center. We're in a retail center,
Hmm.
and right next to us is a Cold Stone Creamery. So every
Oh
Memorial
yeah.
Day weekend, I buy vanilla ice cream from them and do alcoholic root beer floats. So I was like, well, F&M goes back on.
Another weekend at least. At
Yeah,
least.
yeah.
So
We have
have you had any others get close to that same prospect?
yeah, so we have another one which is called It's Not You, It's Mead.
Hmm.
And that one is on frequently. And for me, the main reason is it's an off-dry traditional
Hmm.
with it's all Virginia wildflower blossom, and by having that one on all the time, I'm able to cater to your traditional mead drinker, first of all. But then, second of all, I have something as a reference point for everyone who's never had mead before. And I can say, okay, if you go into your typical meadery, a lot of them are going to be serving products like It's Not You, It's Me. So it
Hmm.
might be that off dry with a little bit of blueberry or cinnamon or lavender or whatever it might be, but
Hmm.
it's a good baseline. And then from that point, within our flight, within our menus and within our flights, if that's the first thing they drink, then they get a baseline, and then they can see the kind of crazy things you can do with mead from
Yeah.
that point. So that one's on. That one's on frequently, just for that reason, to have sort of a baseline mead for
Hmm.
people to, especially people who have never had it before.
Yeah, 100%. That's something we've learned at these pouring events is like a lot of people have never had it, and rather than dive in the deep end of the crazy flavors, we start in there. And
Yeah,
most of the time, as we've experienced, people are like, "Oh, it's fine," and then they try the fruited or the spiced or whatever, and they're like, "Yeah, that's great." But at
yeah,
least
yeah,
you have like a starting point for them,
yeah,
like you mentioned.
yeah. And I would say, if you'd have 100 people drink, it's not you, it's mead, along with all the other meads. There's probably 3 or 4 people that are like, okay, that's the mead I love.
Hmm.
And so we probably sell 3 bottles, 4 bottles out of 100 people, if they were all to purchase a bottle.
Hmm.
Um, and that there's something to be said for traditional meads. Admittedly, I am in general not a fan. Um, you actually you probably know TK Wheeler.
Hmm.
He We were actually talking yesterday, and we are having a whole conversation about BJCP judging and the way the way meads are broken up and branded and that
Hmm.
kind of stuff. And he was like, you've never even made a traditional, if you will, traditional Viking mead. And
Oh,
I was like, well, I mean, it's not to say we can't.
yeah.
And I told him, I was like, all right, let's just for fun, what do you want me to make? And I honestly he kept referring to a mead that I'm not familiar with.
Uh-huh.
It was some sort of orange. It had a
Joe's
specific
Ancient
name.
Orange or something like that.
Yes. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So he kept referring to something like that, and I'm like, that is not for us.
Yeah.
But I was like, all right, I'm gonna make something like that, and I'm just gonna do like a gallon or two messing around,
Yeah.
and I just to say, okay, here you
Mm-hmm.
go, we can do it, blah blah blah, all that kind of stuff. Interestingly enough, we do all these kind of crazy flavors and crazy profiles, and uh, definitely tend more towards the pastry style meads.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but our top two awards from Mazer Cup were both for a dry mellow.
Hmm.
So it was a blackcurrant blackberry dry mellow. So what's cool about that for me is, okay, we're this meadery, everybody looks at us, they go, all they can do is sweet stuff.
Mm-hmm.
They're using sugar to mask all flavors. It's just crazy stuff. And now and by winning that dry berry category, I'm able to go, yeah, I hear what you're saying,
Right.
but this will tell you we can do it.
Mm-hmm.
We choose not to do it because honestly, from the commercial side, the number of people that are seeking dry meads
Mm-hmm.
is far and few between.
Yeah.
um it should be much greater,
Mm-hmm.
uh but the people you need to target for that are wine drinkers, traditional grape wine drinkers, and those people are in general focused on grape wine.
Mm-hmm.
Mead isn't even it's not even on their radar.
Right.
So if you're going to try to attract a drinker to a the world's newest oldest alcohol, uh you better use something that's got flavor in order to attract them. So
Yeah. 100%. I definitely feel like whenever I give my stuff out to friends, I always default to they always default to fruited stuff. And I've found that I like traditionals when it's a fun and interesting honey. If it's a bland something, it's just not super fun. But I do understand it is the the bridge, especially for those wine drinkers, the dry side. I don't like dry stuff as much, but you kind of have to have something that's gonna appease to them.
yeah, yeah, and I suppose I should clarify something. When I say traditional, I mean I'm not necessarily talking about traditional non-fruited meads. In my mind, I'm
Oh, yeah,
thinking
yeah,
more traditional in style, like
yeah. I got you.
semi-sweets and dries, and but with what you just said in terms of traditionals, in the commercial world, at least within the group of people that I consistently talk to,
Hmm.
um, it's sort of a rule. Uh, red meads sell, clear meads don't.
Hmm.
And it's clear or yellow meads
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
don't, because people are looking for tons of flavor.
Hmm.
And the traditionals are often just they're just okay.
Yeah.
We've got a series of meads called Who's Your Honey Guy? And that is a series of traditionals.
Hmm.
And traditionals meaning monovarietals.
Yep.
The first one we released was an acacia blossom monovarietal, super super funky.
Hmm.
Um, that was the best way for me to describe it to people without them tasting it is, think uh, farmhouse sour
Hmm.
without the sour. And
Oh.
it's like barnyardy, it's floral, it's got notes of hay.
Hmm.
It's really, really unique, but it's definitely for a specific group of people. The next one we have coming out, and I don't know, it's done, it's bottled, it's ready to go. I don't know when we'll release it. Is Who's Your Honey Guy Raspberry? So that's a raspberry blossom
Hmm.
traditional. That one is much more unique and approachable. Well, I shouldn't say unique. It's it's more down the line of what I think traditional mead people are going to want to taste, and or people that are new to mead will taste that and go, okay, yeah, I can get notes of, floral, raspberry, and blah blah blah. So, yeah, so we have those things. We don't do them often because of the yellow doesn't sell, red
Hmm.
sells rule. So,
So on that note of selling stuff, you obviously have such a spread of things. What kind of quantity are you making of most your batches at this point?
uh, most batches are, I don't know, somewhere between 40 and 100 gallons, give or take.
Hmm.
Um, and it's it varies, especially when we start doing crazy adjuncts and things like that. A lot of the things that we make, I still use the same homebrew process that I used way back when.
Hmm.
So it can be uber time consuming. Like it sounds so cool. Like when you're a home brewer, you're like, oh, as an example, oh, I'm gonna add peanut butter to this. It's 1 pound of peanut butter per 2 gallons, and it's like it's such a process to make
Hmm.
it work. And then you're like, okay, I'm gonna make 40 gallons, and you're like, wait a second, that's 20
Wait.
pounds of peanut butter, and it takes me an hour and a half to process a pound of peanut butter to where to the point that I can use it. And like I'm like 20 hours of
Yeah.
screwing around with peanut butter. I'm like, so so I usually do a peanut butter and jelly mead once a year. Bananas are another one that are, for
Hmm.
me, is a pain in the ass because I have a unique process for it.
Hmm.
It takes me a long time. But I think we make some of the best banana meads out there, and I would prefer to keep it smaller batch, unique flavor, same process with banana punch, then
Mm.
start looking at other things, uh, flavors
Yeah.
and extracts and things like that. So, not that I'm against extracts at all or flavors, because there's a way to use them. Unfortunately, especially in the beer world, for whatever reason, brewers seem not to understand that more is not always better.
Yeah.
So, if you can use an extract and you can hide the extract in the actual beverage, then you've
Hmm.
done it right.
Yeah.
So,
Have you ever tried? This is not it. This is a Loran oil. These little oils for anything in
yeah,
brewing before. What was your experience
100%.
with them?
Very, very favorable.
Yeah, I've
Um,
I've used mine for peanut butter and it worked well in the past. So
yeah, I mean, I don't use it for peanut butter. Peanut butter for me is 100% organic peanut butter. In
wow.
in my opinion, and this is through all beverages, the best way to get peanut butter flavor is to use peanut butter.
Fascinating,
Now,
huh?
it obviously creates a whole bunch of challenges,
Yeah.
but like PB2 extracts, flavors, you can get damn close, but it's still for me there's always something there. Like
Hmm.
on your palate, you're just like, okay, not bad,
Yeah.
but not 100%, you
Yeah.
know?
I haven't tried
So
real peanut butter on that, but now I'm curious. It does sound like a ginormous mess, though. So there's part of me that goes, it's not. Is it worth it? I don't really know.
yeah, I mean, it's on the commercial side, small batch commercial side, I would say it's worth it because, we make no crust is our peanut butter, great peanut butter and jelly mead.
Hmm.
And when people drink that, they're like, okay, this tastes like a liquid uncrustable. And I
Hmm.
would say for 80% of people, they're like, holy crap, I'm blown away. When are you making this again? And then the other 20% of people are like, okay, this isn't right. Like I shouldn't be able to drink a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and
Yeah.
have it be 14% alcohol.
Right.
So
That's fascinating. I've actually been trying to attempt my own version of a Uncrustable mead too, and that's fun that you're you're talking about it too. I want to switch gears a little bit. So, perusing through your website, which I highly recommend everybody to do this, you have great descriptors of all your meads that you. Well, there's more. This is definitely more than 15 or 11 meads that you have right now.
So
So
what
this look.
so what you have, if you have like, if you're on the tab that's like meads we've made, or
Mm-hmm.
meads, just a general meads, that's like 25% of the meads that we've made since we've been open.
Wow.
So the list is it especially on a social media perspective, like from a website, to
Mm-hmm.
keep, my wife manages that, and she hates every time I make a new mead, um because you can't keep up with it.
Mm-hmm.
That tab would be like 12 or 13 pages long.
I mean, it is a lot now as it stands, but it's really cool. I like what you've done in that you have really cool art, and you also have all these descriptions. I did notice one thing on some of these that are fruited. I'm trying to find an example.
I know what you're
Um,
gonna say.
some of your fruited ones are fermented on at primary, and then you talk about aged on the fruit in secondary, and
Uh-huh.
some of them are just, it says aged on the fruit in secondary.
Uh-huh.
I'm guessing you, from experience, you've picked up there's pros and cons to both sides of those things. What kind of pros do you feel there are for aging, or I guess putting your fruit in secondary or post fermentation?
So, I I guess the best way for me to put this is, if you're looking to produce a mead which is gonna blast you out of the world with flavor, with a fruit flavor. We'll just use raspberries as an example. If you want a raspberry mead that is going to be absolutely just straight raspberry mead, um, limited honey, limited honey contribution,
Mm-hmm.
then it's raspberries in primary,
Mm-hmm.
raspberries in secondary.
Mm-hmm.
Usually split, for me, it's usually split 50-50 or 60-40, something like that. Um, for the meads where the mead is aged on the fruit, that sort of gives us the ability to take a mead, a traditional, and then pick any fruit we want, and just allow that fruit flavor to um, lightly infuse the mead.
Mm, okay.
Obviously, you can change infusion by increasing the amount of fruit, that kind of thing. But
Mm-hmm.
there, you're going to get a more of a mead backbone or a
Mm-hmm.
honey backbone with fruit flavor.
Yeah.
So, and in general, if you look at the way we do those things, those meads where we age the mead, or age the fruit in the mead in secondary only, those tend to be our semi-sweets.
Okay. Yeah.
And those, for me, track more with your traditional meadery.
Mm, okay.
So any of our semi-sweets that are aged just on fruit, that's more like, in general, what you would find if you went into a meadery that's not making you know, not making a honeydew melon and cotton candy mead, you know.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, that's interesting. I asked that because I feel like obviously there's no wrong way to make meat. I think we make this abundantly clear. You can go a million paths to go. I'm sure there are actually wrong ways to make meat. There are there are many right ways to make meat. Is maybe the better way to say it. And some people prefer to do either direction of primary versus secondary. In my experience, what I've felt, and I'd be curious to hear your opinions on this, when I do fruit in primary versus secondary, I often feel like I get more tannin structure coming from the mead that had fruit in primary versus fruit just in secondary. Have you any experience with that? Any opinions on that?
yeah, I would say maybe you do get a little bit more of a contributing factor in tannins on uh, fruit in primary. But with that said, as I mentioned, most of our meads that we're fermenting with fruit in primary.
Mm-hmm.
We're also focused more on the sweet to pastry style meads.
Mm.
So fruit content is super high, honey content is super high, residual sugars are super high.
Yeah.
So in actuality, having some of those additional tannins helps balance the overall sweetness of the meads
Yeah.
to the point where they're mostly negligible or
Hmm.
mostly unnoticeable.
Yeah.
Um, it we so I was at Sugar Belt this weekend in Indiana, and we brought a mead called Largus hypohydromolosis, which is a plum strawberry vanilla mead.
Hmm.
Um, so it's fermented on plums, um, and it is super tannic and super tart.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also it's also the highest, the mead with the highest residual sugar we've ever made.
Hmm.
So then we took that and we aged it on strawberries and vanilla. And by having this super tart and tannic plum mead and then adding strawberries and vanilla to it, it kind of introduced, for me, it's probably the best mead I could introduce a dry wine drinker
Oh,
to
fascinating.
mead using.
Hmm.
Because it's final gravity 1.112, like
Woo.
through the roof. Yeah,
Yeah.
final gravity. But it tastes like it's a 1.04 because it's
Fascinating.
so tannic and so tart from the plum,
Mm-hmm.
but it still has this huge fruit flavor.
Yeah.
So it's like, so I think for us, I haven't really experienced a super tannic evidence of a super amount of tannins in a finished product because most of the time we're fermenting, uh we're we're finishing at a higher gravity,
Yeah. That makes
balancing
sense.
it out.
Yeah, 100%. I talking about final gravities, I immediately thought of a mead I had went to Mazer Cup award ceremony 2 years ago, and Ken Schramm was there, and he had brought some of his meads, and one it was final gravity 1.100, and it was a traditional, and I remember drinking it, and it was very sweet. I mean, it was very good to be clear, but it was very sweet. And then I was prompted to go home and try to make my own things on higher sweetness levels at the end. And I had the same problem with blueberry. I made a blueberry mead that was fairly tart, and I kept back sweetening post fermentation, and finally got to about 1065 or whatever. And I was like, it's finally there. It's finally balanced enough. And previously, I had not ever gone that high with a final gravity. But to the point, the balancing of that sweetness and those other characters is so interesting. And for young palates, people who don't know what they're doing, I think we often end with a sweet mead if they've done something crazy, and then they don't know what to do to fix it. So obviously, this is for anyone listening, this is your hint to use other flavors, adjuncts, acids, stuff like that that can help to counterbalance when you have a fermentation that ends extremely sweet. I highly doubt most people are going to end at 1.112, but if they do, it sounds like there's some sort of resolve for them.
Yeah, yeah, and in general, we tend not to back sweeten.
Hmm.
So most of our final gravities are finished gravities after fermentation.
Hmm.
Um, and the reason for me is because by not back sweetening, the overall mead characteristic is more homogeneous. So you get like the honey's been there the whole time, the fruit's been there the whole time. You're not introducing a a super potent flavor
Hmm.
of honey as an example.
Yeah.
Now sometimes we do it intentionally.
Hmm.
Um, Meadow foam honey, everybody knows what that is. That's one of the best honeys in the world, and absolutely do it. Well, in general, I would say don't ferment it.
Right.
We do once in a while. That's an expensive fermentation, but
Yeah.
use it for what it's good for. You know, it's good for adding a marshmallowy vanilla character to a finished mead. So use it for its flavor and floral and aromatic characteristics.
Yeah.
So we'll do a mead every now and then where we'll back sweeten with maple honey um or meadow foam. There's a couple of others, but oftentimes we don't back sweeten
Mhm.
because I don't want that to be the predominant flavor.
Yeah. I'd really love to put together a test. I got to figure out how to balance it, but to do one where you take a traditional and you ferment, you get it up to that starting gravity enough to where it stops at 1040, whatever, and then you have a version that goes dry, and then you back sweeten to 1040. Of course, then you have to balance your alcohol ratios, make sure they're the same, but essentially just do a side by side to see what differences you would taste. Obviously, yeast health and those things for the one that started higher would be different. Hopefully the same, but possibly different. But an interesting test. I'd love to see that
Uh,
because I've heard the same thing you're saying from other
It
people.
would be, I would imagine the flavor profile would be hugely different.
Yeah.
It would, the one where you're adding the honey back in
Mm-hmm.
is going to be honey forward.
Mm-hmm.
Honey forward, and obviously depending on what honey you're using, my assumption is in your test you're
Mm-hmm.
going to use the same honey that you
Yeah.
fermented.
100%.
But it's going to be it's that mead will undoubtedly taste more like the honey you've used to back sweeten it than the other one.
Yeah.
Um,
You might be
and
you might be signing up for this bottles of this test by saying this. If I end up doing it, I might be sending you a box.
yeah, it's I guess it's always been something for me in particular. Like it's always been some. I love the taste of honey, and I've got hundreds of different mono varietals where we get samples and we taste them all, and there's some that are super crazy. There's some
Hmm.
that I absolutely don't like. Um, because I don't like them doesn't mean other people don't. It's
Hmm.
like there's so many different flavors. Um, but for me, it's always been all right. If I'm gonna make you, especially in the crazy flavor category, right? If I'm gonna make you a mead that has bananas and double stuffed Oreos in it, it better taste like bananas and double stuffed Oreos.
Yeah.
It's not a mead that is bananas, double stuffed Oreos, and honey.
Hmm.
It's bananas and double stuffed Oreos. So the honey is the backbone,
Hmm.
and it's the backbone beverage uh, to carry those other flavors. And this is one of the cool things, in my opinion, about honey in general or meads in general is if you this kind of rolls into the beer thing, but if you take a traditional mead versus I don't know, let's say a golden ale. If
Hmm.
you take the two and then you adjunct them, much like you're talking about in the mead side, but if you adjunct them with the same thing, the peanut butter or let's say bananas and double stuffed Oreos in both,
Hmm.
the one that is made with the honey, with the what the mead is going to carry those adjuncts so much so much cleaner
Yeah.
than a golden ale
Right.
because you've got hops and malts and there's so many other things that go into that beer that impact the flavor
Hmm.
than the mead. And so like that's one of the coolest things about mead in general is it's like if you make a really good traditional
Hmm.
and it has no off flavors. It's super clean. It might have some floral characteristics from the honey, and depending on which wildflower honey you're using, it'll change here and there subtly. But if you can make something that's just super clean and awesome, you can take that and do all kinds of crazy stuff with it.
Yeah.
Now, figuring out how to do those crazy things with it is that's the fun part for me.
Right.
Um, and so that's like for me why when I was considering opening a commercial venture,
Hmm.
it was for me it was mead. Okay, there's in general there's very few meaderies. There are a bunch, a lot of super small ones.
Hmm.
A lot of them are traditional meaderies.
Hmm.
There are very few meaderies that are, throwing things at a wall and then going, okay, I'm making that.
Right. Yeah.
That's just there are very few like that. So I was like, all right, well, let's do this. Opening a brewery 3 or 4 years ago. Well, I guess so technically three, but we've been making commercially for four.
Hmm.
4 years ago, like I absolutely wasn't going to open a brewery because there are 35 breweries in downtown Richmond. You know
Yeah.
that 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 would I don't know from a business perspective that would be dumb.
Yeah.
Um, my background, I was in chemical sales for 20 years, business development manager. Like that would have been a poor business decision. So it was like, and then mead is in my opinion, mead is much more fun.
Yeah.
Now you can do some crazy stuff with beer for sure. And now we're doing it mostly on the stout side of the equation because I have love for pastry stouts, but um, yeah, yeah, it would have been a bad decision to open a brewery. So I'm glad we didn't.
Yeah. So on that front, I'm curious if you are doing beer, are there liquor laws where in Oklahoma we would have to separate them out completely? You couldn't have malt on the premises of a meadery. Obviously, then
Yep.
you're out of luck. What's it look like for Virginia?
So for Virginia, we have to have two separate licenses.
Hmm.
I have actually three licenses, but the long and the short of it is I've got a commercial winery license and I have a commercial brewery license. And your brewery can exist within a winery or a winery within a brewery
Hmm.
as long as there is equipment designated for the production of one of those things.
Hmm.
Um, so the way it needs to be uh, from the legal perspective, it needs to be delineated somehow
Hmm.
by a barrier, but a barrier is uh, it's very vague.
Yeah.
So a piece of tape on the floor is a barrier between your brewery and your winery.
Fascinating. Hmm.
Yeah, so it doesn't have to have a wall. It doesn't have to be uh you don't have to have like I could have grains in the meadery.
Okay. Yeah.
So I'd say that Virginia is definitely much more uh lax in that regard, which is nice.
That does sound nice. Oklahoma's
Yeah.
not caught up with this, and so we're not looking to open a brewery by any means, but even on the wine mead side, Oklahoma's lacking, so it's kind of a difficult world.
I would say everybody is lacking when it comes to mead
Hmm.
and what the definition there of mead is and where it should fall and the federal government has placed it in the category of wine and so this has influences uh on what products you can use in mead, technically speaking,
Hmm.
um and uh you know how you can make mead is influenced by wine, and it's kind of aggravating because you know growing grapes and harvesting honey from hives is super different.
Yeah. Wait,
uh
what?
yeah, so the powers that be don't necessarily understand that, but
Hmm.
you just have to kind of work with what you can.
Yeah.
So I mentioned the banana and double stuffed Oreo mead. We cannot ferment double stuffed Oreos,
Hmm.
but double stuffed Oreos in secondary as an adjunct is okay.
Interesting. Huh.
So it's wishy-washy.
Yeah.
So
That. Oh,
mm,
great. That's interesting. Okay, I want to switch gears a little bit. I know we're running out of time, and
Mm.
I just
Sorry, I
meant,
talk a lot. So
no, it's great.
if it's helpful for you, I could probably do another 10 minutes on top. So
Well, we can make whatever work, but I want to switch gears a little bit because you mentioned were of course a home brewer for a amount of time, and now of course you're
yeah.
commercial. So a lot of people listening to this have aspirations to go commercial. What are some things, not necessarily like red tape or stuff that you have to think about to open a meadery, but what are some things that would benefit somebody who wants to start one, like pieces of advice, in your opinion? I know there's a lot.
Um, Make sure you know how to run a business.
Uh-huh.
Um, I would say that's my biggest piece of advice. It's being a home mead maker and then turning this into a business is significantly different.
Hmm.
The fun part of being a home mead maker is making mead, coming up with all these crazy flavors, doing all these, crazy meads and seeing if you can do special things. I'd say I spend 25% of my time doing that.
Yeah.
So the other 75% of the time is all things you don't even think about when you're opening a meadery or opening a business. And it's a lot to balance. For me, I it's more or less a one man show.
Mm.
I have an assistant mead maker. He'll come in, help me mix batches and bottle and that kind of stuff. My wife is a CPA, fortunately, so she handles all the business
Hmm.
side of this. So I don't have to worry about the POS system and all that kind of stuff. That's all that's all crazy business things you don't really have time for.
Yep.
Um, but even on top of that, I'm behind the bar 85% of the time.
Wow.
Um, I I work every day.
Hmm.
Um, there are no days off. Like one day you'll be like, oh, I think I'll take this day off, and then you're like, oh, but I need to do this and this and this and this. It's a lot of little things, right? So especially in a small business, we were talking about this earlier with my assistant me maker is cash flow, right? So this is a huge topic, and my wife, the CPA, hates that I ignore it. But I'm going to make sure that I have everything that I need when I need it.
Hmm.
So we just bought $3,500 worth of honey that I'm not planning on using until middle of June.
Hmm.
But I've got it now, and I don't have to worry about it in my head. I don't have to balance things.
Yep.
And it goes from honey to cork. So, do you have the corks? If you go on bottling day and you don't have corks, then you're screwed.
Right.
So it's like it's there's all these things in between from start to finish, and none of it has anything to do with making mead.
Yeah.
So I'd say if you're interested in becoming a commercial meadery, make sure your ducks in a row are in a row with everything else outside of making mead.
Hmm.
Make sure you have the contacts, the suppliers, more than one. Like when COVID hit, you had glass, you couldn't get bottles.
Hmm.
For our first year, we had six different models, different bottle shapes and different bottle types, which then impacts the label size, who's printing it, like all of these things you don't ever think about as a home mead maker because you throw a piece of tape on your bottle and it says blueberry mead,
Hmm.
So um, that's the kind of thing that I think a lot of people neglect, and a lot of home brewers and home mead makers, th- independent of the number of awards you've made, that's those or gotten those things are a function of your mead.
Hmm.
That doesn't mean that opening a meadery or a brewery is what you should do.
Yeah.
So and that's sort of dark, I guess,
Hmm.
but it's kind of the reality of it. Like this is a very, very difficult industry.
Yeah, 100%. I totally understand that. And it's interesting you say that because for a long time I've made this apple cinnamon mead recipe and I've submitted to competitions and won medals and things, and that's been really cool. But the more important thing has been when I take it to pouring events are the people who really enjoy it and like it, and the people who flock to that, because that says to me, if there were to be a meadery and I were to sell that it would be a popular thing. And sometimes when we win an award from a judge, it's or two or three judges, that's only two or three opinions. That's not quite the denominator that says, hey, this is truly something that will sell out in stores or whatever.
For what it's worth, and for what it's worth, that's the opinion of two or three judges who are uh, BJCP oriented.
Mm-hmm.
Th- I, I I mean, our Swedish fish session mead is super popular and we sell a ton of it. It tastes like Swedish fish, and we got poor scores from BJCP judges. Of
Yeah.
course we did, because it was a Swedish fish mead, you know, like it.
Yeah.
But but I'm not. My intention is not to sell to three BJCP judges.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's to sell to the masses, to the people that are coming into the meadery. So
Yep.
it's very, it's very, very different. And sometimes I enter meets like that just sort of for fun,
Oh
you
yeah,
know,
100%.
because I know they're going to get torn apart. Because they're not what you. I mean, technically, it's a pomegranate mead with a flavor,
Mm-hmm.
and so it's melomel, if you
Yeah.
will. You know, and so we have a couple of different things like that. You know, and so I don't know. It's like I said, in the realm of business, you have to come to the point where you're like, okay, I don't want to make what I like. I need to make what sells.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's a really difficult hurdle for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And you also can't take it you can't take it personally if somebody doesn't like your mead or makes a face in front of you while you're serving it to them,
Right.
or you know has our you we have a flight of which allows the consumer to do all 10 of our meads in one flight.
Wow.
Um, and they're 2 and 4 ounce pours, so
Right.
it's not as much as it sounds like, but um, you can't be upset if somebody drinks two of the glasses and the other eight come back almost full,
Right.
you know, and it first year for me, I was like, oh man, like this is really disappointing. This is this it I looked at it as a negative, and there are some people that just come in to taste a little and take it home. And then there are some people that, you know, they don't like it. And what I came to terms with was, okay, well, they paid to dump it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and that's a hard thing to that's hard thing to suck up sometimes.
Well, especially when us homebrewers get very attached to the things we create, and then you sort of that offense. It seems natural, but you're right.
Yep.
It is, as a business, you can't let that offense be a personal thing.
No.
It's just how the world works.
Yep.
All right, I want to do one more. I want to ask you one more question, and then we'll wrap up. So you obviously have a very um, mix and match recipe oriented mindset on how you're making things based off what I've seen from your website and everything you've described today. How do you, or I guess, what advice would you give homebrewers who are looking to expand their palate and or just get more creative with their mead making? What advice would you give them?
Just do it. Just straight up Nike. You know what? At this point, I might actually add that to my list of mead names. We'll just make
Yeah.
a mead called Nike. It's don't let I spend I spend zero time on threads and discords, and
Hmm.
I don't. I'm not on social media with the exception of Instagram or Facebook for the business.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't pay attention to anything that's said about Mead. What One of the interesting things I see, obviously, I speak with TK on a regular basis, and my assistant meat makers on there from time to time, and they're constantly coming back and saying, "Oh, this guy says you can't do this, and this guy says you can't do that," and they're going, "Oh no, like what are you doing? Why are you doing that? I would do it like this." Well, there's a million different ways to do this thing,
Yeah.
and I mean, literally, just whatever you think you should do, just do it. And
Mm-hmm.
then if it doesn't work, learn from it. Like those are the keys.
Yeah.
Like I can tell you this with 100% certainty. You can put bacon in a mead and sell it commercially and it won't go bad. You can do
Fascinating.
it. We do it. You can put double stuffed Oreos in a mead without it going bad. You can put peanut butter in a mead
Mm-hmm.
without it going bad, as long as you figure out the ways to make it happen.
Mm-hmm.
And make it happen so that those things don't happen.
Yeah.
And, a lot of it is chemistry, a lot of it is trial and error.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many different things, but you can put just about anything in there. You can put cheesecake in a mead. Like I'm sorry, but if I was on one of the threads or on a Discord, and I went in there and I said, "Hey guys, I'm going to make a mead with bacon," I would have a
Oh
thousand
yeah.
people come in and say, "You can't do that."
Yeah.
So, but I, you can say I can't do that. I can tell you already, you can, and it has been done.
Well, we have the
So,
luxury as homebrewers to be able to experiment like that too.
yep,
Obviously, you're not. Some leaps of faith I feel like shouldn't be done on the dime of a business unless you were just ready to possibly see the bad results. And I'm sure you've
yep.
experienced that too. I'm sure there are things you've tried that have not panned out as well as you thought, but that
You
is
know,
part of it.
to be honest, some of those things are like some of the more traditional things for me. Like somebody was like, "Hey, I want a lemon peppermint mead." I'm
Hmm.
like, "Okay, sounds good." Well, we made a lemon peppermint mead, and to me, it tastes like a Hall's cough drop. I was like, "There's no way in hell that I'm gonna sell this."
Yeah.
So we took that mead and we reworked it into a mead called Mead Scow Mule, which was a mead, a freshie, which tastes exactly like a Moscow Mule.
Hmm.
So like it worked out, but like it's some of those more traditional flavors and adjuncts that, quite frankly, for me, are more problematic.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I
and
can
I
see
think
that.
it's a lot of times those things are they're supposed to be subtle and they don't end up being subtle, and then it causes more and more problems. So,
Yeah.
but
Well, I definitely feel maybe I'll go throw some bacon in something now. Maybe you've convinced me to give it a shot. I don't know, or double stuffed Oreos. Now my wheels are spinning with ideas. So
I
thank
mean,
you for the creativity.
it's seriously like crazy the things that you could do. Um, just as you think about the crazy, like a grand key lime pie, right?
Mm-hmm.
How would you make a key lime pie mead? I mean, most home brewers would do key lime.
Mm-hmm.
They would do key lime. They would do honey as the base, obviously, and
Mm-hmm.
then they would use a graham cracker extract.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That Why the hell can't you put graham crackers in it?
Right. I've definitely done that. Actually, that's one I've hit, and I used a little bit of wort base with some honey malt, yeah, as part of my graham cracker taste, and it worked well. So, yeah, but you're right. There's no law against throwing graham crackers in, but the moment you go off and you tell somebody, "Hey, I'm about to do this," you might have a plethora of people who are
Yeah,
strongly opinionated that that is
yeah,
not a great idea.
yeah,
So I really appreciate your creative mind and willingness to try a bunch of different things. And I sure hope that at
absolutely.
some point I can make my way out there to try some of this stuff. I would love. You mentioned a 10 glass flight, and that sounds quite awesome to experience.
Yeah, it's pretty cool because it's set up so it goes from driest to sweetest.
Hmm.
You get to experience everything we have on tap at that moment.
Hmm.
So it's really pretty cool to go through the different tasting experience.
Well, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put every link I can to support Matthew and Funktastic Mead. You can find all their stuff. I don't. Do you guys ship, or are you just in
We
Taproot?
do. We ship via Vino Shipper
Oh, okay.
to most states. I think it's 38 or 39 states.
Okay. So if you're not able, like me, not able necessarily to get out there right now, and you want to try some, go ahead and purchase some through them. Support them. Support Matthew and his mission. I think you guys are doing great stuff, and I'd be very very curious to try it. I'm looking forward to seeing what's on tap in a couple months. Obviously, you have stuff now, and then I feel like your wheels are spinning so fast that we're gonna see even more cool stuff coming out
Yep.
very soon.
Yep. For
Is
sure.
there any other way we can support you in this time?
I would say you know whether you come to Funktastic Meads or another meadery is just to get out there and visit your local meaderies, visit their tap rooms,
Hmm.
uh, tell everyone you know about mead, and majority of them are going to go, oh, it's mead, it's made with honey, right? It's super sweet, and
Yeah.
then you like educate them,
Yeah.
educate the people that don't know because it's amazing how many people have not a clue what this beverage is, and how diverse it can be. Like
Yeah.
I for me, when you're doing your education, talk about more traditional Viking meads, then talk about Funktastic Fizz F&M root beer or Breaking Bad honeydew melon and cotton candy. Talk about those things because this is a beverage that I think is far more diverse than anyone out there.
Yeah.
And
100%.
nobody knows about it.
That's true.
So I shouldn't say nobody, but few
It's
people
not
know
as
about it.
yeah, not as common as we would hope it'd
Yes.
be. Well,
Yep.
Matthew, thank you for your time. Thank you for giving us all your sage advice too, and I hope that people will take some time. If you're local to Virginia, get over there and try it. If not, if you're passing through, get over to Funktastic and try a flight. I feel like I can confidently say you will try some very interesting mead that maybe might not be your normal cup of tea based off of some of the things I've heard, but I'm sure you also have plenty of normal things as well on tap. So,
Normal.
yeah. Well, again, we appreciate you, and I'll put all those links below, but thanks for chatting.
Yep.
All
No
right.
problem. Take care.
Cheers.